Well, hello everyone. I'm Councilmember Paul Krekorian, and I want to thank you for joining us again for the latest in our series of webinars about the impacts of COVID-19 and resources that are available for those who have been impacted by it. Today we're going to be talking about the film and television industry and professionals who have been working in that industry, how this has impacted that sector of our economy, that very crucial sector of our economy, and what resources there are available to help those who've been so severely impacted by reductions in the amount of production that we've had here in Los Angeles as a result of COVID-19. You know, people around the country think of Los Angeles and they think of Hollywood and the film industry here, and usually they think in terms of the famous people that they see walking on red carpets during awards shows. And those of us who live here in Los Angeles much better understand that the film and television industry, the real film and television industry, is made up of people who are our neighbors, the parents of children at our neighborhood schools, our soccer coaches, people who live in our neighborhoods who have good middle-class jobs because of film and television production here in Southern California. So when film and television production slows down or stops for any reason, it has a very significant impact not only on those families, but all of the businesses that those families would normally patronize as well. So all of us, whether we're in the film and television industry or not, are definitely impacted when production slows down in Southern California. So I'm very pleased to have a really stellar panel of guests with me today who are going to talk about some of these things and sort of look towards the future as well as to how those who are impacted might be able to get help, what changes there may be coming in the industry as a result of COVID-19. Maybe some of those will be permanent changes. But I'm looking forward to talking to each of them about their perspectives about this very critical part of our local economy. So I'd like to recognize my guests now and introduce them. First, we have with us Philip Sokoloski, who's the Vice President of Integrated Communications for FilmLA. FilmLA is the world's largest and busiest film office and has the task of trying to coordinate all of the filming that goes on in Los Angeles, coordinating with neighborhoods to ensure that the impacts are reduced as much as we can. It's a gargantuan task, and I'm very pleased to be able to welcome Philip here today with us. We also have with us Kathy Bañuelos, who is the Vice President of Government Affairs for NBC Universal, one of the world's most important producers of content, one of the oldest film studios in all of the world, really. And we're very pleased to have Kathy here to speak from the studio's perspective about this. And then last but certainly not least is a legendary leader of labor in the film and television industry. Thom Davis, for decades, has been one of the most important voices of working men and women in film and television. He is the business manager of I.A.T.S.E Local 80 and also Vice President of the California Labor Federation and the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. So I'm pleased to have all of you here with us. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. And Philip, if I can start with you, if you could kind of give us an overview of what film and television production means to our local economy. I spoke about it a moment ago sort of anecdotally, but I'm not sure if people who don't work in this industry fully appreciate how much all of us benefit from having it here. So if you could speak a little bit to that point, please. Under normal circumstances, under sort of the pre-COVID circumstances, what does this industry mean to Southern California?
Well, you know, that's a great place to start because really it is essential for everybody to recognize what we're working so hard these days to reclaim. Before the COVID-19 pandemic struck and upended all of our lives and shut all film production activity in the city down within the space of a week, the number of films, TV shows, and commercials then in production in Los Angeles were trending near record highs, putting hundreds of thousands of Angelenos to work, over 500,000 if you count the extended jobs benefits from positions created by direct industry employment. California's Film and Television Tax Credit Program, which is now in its third iteration, since you and your colleagues actually started it up way back when, was bringing dozens of television projects and feature films to California, and in particular Los Angeles, on an annual basis. The local unions were reporting near full employment. There were expanded work opportunities through new names added to their roster. And in fact, you look at the impact of the film industry on production overall, and on the other kinds of aspects that it touches. Filmmakers had full access to city and county-owned park facilities, beaches. They made regular use of local schools and school parking lots, generating a revenue source that could be used by those institutions for the betterment of public life here in Los Angeles. Greater Los Angeles was very much open for work in February and in March prior to the pandemic. And it all came to a very, very sudden halt right around the 20th of March.
And I appreciate your mentioning the film and television production tax incentive. It helps us to put the changes that have been happening over the last few months in a larger context too. And Thom Davis was one of the warriors to try to enact that incentive here in California. I was proud to be the author of the first successful production tax incentive when I was a member of the California State Assembly quite some time ago now. But for close to 30 years, we have struggled here in Los Angeles with losing production to other states and countries that offer these very lucrative incentives. California got back in the game when we enacted ours, and we're starting to win some of that back. But Thom, if I could turn to you for a moment, because you've kind of seen it all. You've seen the impacts of runaway production. You saw the impacts of the writers' strike. This is an industry in which production goes up and sometimes goes quite down. How does that impact your members when they have a good job in a reliable industry, and then like that, production can almost grind to a halt? What does that do to the men and women who are members of your union?
Oh, it was absolutely devastating. And first, I'd like to start by saying thank you for your work in 2009. Right, the film and television tax credit is really what we have today is really the legacy of what you were able to accomplish in 2009. So I thank you for that. It was absolutely devastating. Right, we went from full employment on March 13th to about 99% unemployment on March 15th. So just over that weekend, literally the bottom dropped out. And it's only now that's starting to come back. So people have been in a full 6 months without employment as a result of this pandemic. And for the union that I represent and our sister locals, it's really bigger than just motion picture, right? We have people in convention, people in live theater, amusement parks, and those folks are still out of work as a result of this. And unfortunately, because of the way that this pandemic's been handled, I don't know that there's really any light at the end of the tunnel for a lot of those. It's going to be a very long time before we see ourselves having crowds in live performance venues. And until that time, those people are still in a very bad way.
Is there any opportunity for people to shift into other areas? If that sector of the entertainment industry remains shut down, is there any way that folks who are working in conventions can, for example, or amusement parks can find work in some other sector? Is that too much to expect?
No, it's not too much to expect at all. We've actually been working with our sister locals in those areas. As motion picture continues to pick up, which and thankfully it is. We've been talking with the sister locals, primarily the stagehands, and trying to backfill some of that demand with those folks, right? To give them an opportunity to just take care of the basics, be it a car payment or the mortgage or whatever that may be. We're like I said, we're just starting to get to come online. I think Universal was actually one of the first studios to pick up and start the process. But it's only been the last week and a half to 2 weeks that we've seen productions actually come back into production and start moving ahead with their schedules. So I'm very optimistic about what we're going to be seeing going forward. And and I think we're still being impacted by this pandemic.
So that's actually a great segue to Kathy, because of course NBC Universal covers just about all aspects, television, film, and amusement parks. So if you can, Kathy, talk a little bit about how things have changed from the studio's perspective with regard to production, and what are you looking at right now in terms of starting to ramp production back up?
So thank you, Councilmember, for the opportunity to speak today. We've seen just tremendous changes since the shutdown in March. At the time that the shutdowns began to happen, we had, I want to say, approximately 22 television projects actively in production in the LA area alone. And so it took quite a bit to shut everything down, get everything into a place where we can just put a pin in it for the time being. None of us were really certain how long it would be before we can start. And so it's been a long, grueling 6 months since that time, working with the team of attorneys, medical experts, production safety experts, our labor partners, to figure out exactly how we're going to be able to come back safely. And so we're nowhere near resuming all work on those 22 shows. We're starting little by little. We actually had a couple of our alternative sort of TV programs go ahead first. For example, The Voice and America's Got Talent, which made use of the theme park while it's closed to be able to spread out and really enhance physical distancing and still deliver a pretty high quality television product. We are now just starting to begin filming on some of our scripted shows. And so we've had a couple begin this month on the backlot. I can't even begin to explain the effort that went into planning. Back when we first got sort of approvals to begin our production planning process, we put together a team. We went through versions of a production playbook, a safety playbook that is now being deployed and is being utilized for all of our productions on the lot as well as off lot. Everything has to go through rigorous review. Anyone who wants to come to the lot for any activity has to get layers of approval. And it's just, we're very serious about it. We don't want anyone getting sick. But at the same time, because of the impact to the economy and also to the business, we recognized how critical it was to be able to figure this out right away as soon as possible. We also went through sort of stimulus. We stress tested the production playbook. Before we started any productions, we actually had a group of volunteers come in and kind of simulate what an active set would look like. They did things like put random props in places where they shouldn't be, and then had them figure out, well, how do we handle an unsanitized prop? So hours and hours of just really stress testing, going into various scenarios and organizing our production plans as such so that we can resume as safely as possible, but also mitigate any impacts in the unfortunate event of someone getting sick so that it disrupts production as little as possible.
It's an interesting example you gave of the prop that's out of place, because for those of us who don't work in this industry, we sometimes, I think the layperson can forget how much improvisation is involved in any film shoot, how many people there are working on any film shoot at any given time, each of them with a different task, and how on an hour-to-hour basis, on a minute-to-minute basis, things are changing and people are having to improvise and decisions are being made on the spot, and it makes it very difficult to have a controlled environment where all of the safety conditions can be closely monitored and enforced. I would imagine that on a sound stage, that is probably an easier exercise than when you're out on location someplace, when it's a little bit less controlled of an environment. So Philip, back to you to talk a little bit about location shooting. First of all, what's happening with applications for location shooting in LA these days? Are they starting to come back yet? What are the trends that you're seeing? And what conditions are now being put in place to ensure safety out on film locations? You're muted.
So thank you. Film production received the go-ahead to resume in middle of June. And as early as June 19th, we were receiving applications and beginning to process permits to film. Now, the earliest projects to come back were typically from the advertising sector, still photography and commercials. They have some of the smallest crews and are able to get up to speed relatively quickly because the logistics are far less complicated for that genre of production. But since that time, we've been tracking the production on a month-by-month basis. And to date, since the June resumption, we've had about 1,127 film permits come through our doors across 829 unique projects. It breaks down to about an average of 27 permit applications per day. And that's well below what we would expect to have seen at this time in an ordinary year. Particularly missing are the scripted television projects that Kathy mentioned, and the feature films, the larger scale activity that not only has the more logistical complexity behind it, but also the larger neighborhood impact. So as local communities have been able to experience the ordinary effects of the pandemic, which are themselves extraordinary, they haven't had in great measure to get used to the idea of filming coming back to their communities. But as it does, there are new measures in place to protect public health and the people who work in film and television themselves. From our office's perspective, we're looking primarily at compliance with the county health order, which has a very specific addendum tailor-made to film production. It is a 9-page checklist of rules to follow called Appendix J. And every film production that takes place and seeks a permit from our office has to certify that they will name a COVID-19 compliance officer whose job it is to ensure the production's compliance with that checklist of rules. It lays out things that should be very familiar to anybody who's been to a grocery store. Use of personal protective equipment, physical distancing, sanitation procedures. However, it was adapted for the film industry specifically in consultation with film industry experts along the way. So it's robust yet flexible enough to allow studios and others to build upon it to create even safer conditions when logistics warrant. And so I'd be happy to go into detail more about what's happening in neighborhoods, but perhaps that's a good place to let my other colleagues have a say.
Well, and I actually wanted to follow up with you on that point, because FilmLA has the difficult task of being the buffer between production that happens in neighborhoods and the neighbors who live there. And you are often the place where that friction is when there is friction, where that's felt. And FilmLA has adopted a number of steps to ensure that those frictions are minimized, not least of which is going out and notifying all the people in a given neighborhood that a film shoot is coming, asking them to indicate whether asking neighbors to indicate whether there are any special considerations that should be taken into account. And it's a really robust process of outreach, of going door to door. It's labor intensive, but that's what FilmLA oversees. And I'm wondering how that process itself has been impacted by the pandemic, number one. And number two, given that so many more people are having to comply with safer at home orders, and you have more people who are in neighborhoods during the day rather than at the office or at work, is that complicating your task? Is that making it harder for you to do your job of being that buffer between production and neighborhoods?
It most certainly is. And so with regard to the points of community interaction, the ones you mentioned, notices of filming are being distributed. We've had to retrain our field staff to also follow the outlines or the guidance of Appendix J in terms of how they conduct the job and how they maintain public contact through that. And then up until very recently, production companies were not allowed or required to go door to door to conduct the filming surveys that have been an essential part of the negotiation process of the final permit outcome. And that recently resumed, but only after we worked very closely together with the city, the county, local public health experts to modify that practice, because folks are understandably very concerned when somebody comes to their door and has an ask of them and wants to hand them a piece of paper. That process has been made largely contactless. It was modified following the requirements that are now being used by workers for the US Census. So that has restored a long-held way for production companies and community members to be in contact, for there to be an open dialogue about the concern levels. And not surprisingly, some of those concern levels are directly reflective of what we see on the streets with the pandemic. So for example, lots of Angelenos, if they happen to be working, are working from home. And many others who are not working are parking their vehicles on the streets. So parking access, which is always a bit of an issue for us, is even more so of a concern when we're working out the logistics of permits. We want to make sure that there's, in residential areas, ample room for people to park who live there. In commercial areas, we're negotiating around the Alfresco Streets program to make sure that the restaurants, which have also been looking to return to business and obtain some sense of normalcy, are not impacted by film work. So we have, fortunately, a lot of tools in place that allow us to track this, to map the situation on the ground, and to give our coordinators some insight into what impacts may be in play in a particular location. But it has definitely dialed up the difficulty. We didn't used to have to keep a set aside amount of parking for as often as we now do, so that passenger vans could come and drop people off in ones and twos. You simply can't get around set as quickly as you could, or to set from base camp. And so everything from the duration of a day to the duration of a stay is all impacted by the fact that people can get less done in a workday now because of all the need to attend to the COVID related precautions.
Thom, Philip mentioned some of the public health guidelines that the county has developed specific to the industry, and I know that Labor has been working with the governor's office on statewide guidelines. There's been a task force that's been working on this. Can you bring us up to date on where that work is, and where do things stand now from Labor's perspective in terms of ensuring the safety of people who work in this industry when they're on set?
Well, the governor's task force, that work is pretty much complete now at this point. It's been turned over to the local officials, meaning like the county health department. And I must say the county health department is really been a great partner in this whole endeavor. You know, they not only just rely on the science, but they're also open to you know, suggestions and wanting to know how the actual mechanics, the day-to-day mechanics of how a set works. So as they're relying on the science to make the decisions, everything comes together. So, and then I think that's one of the things that have allowed us to get back as early as we have. You know, with regards to the overall safety, though, I must say that there was some ground that was in the labor relations field. Anyway, there was some ground that was really broken in this. In that early on, we had what was called the white paper, and that was sort of the framework that the governor's office used in order to allow the industry to come back. And that was really a remarkable piece of work, because the unions and management came together and they set aside all the differences. They set aside all the bargaining, if you will, and said, okay, how do we make this work? How do we make this as safe as humanly possible and still be able to achieve the production of a product? And it was really quite a sight to see. It was, my 23 years as being here in the union, running a union, it was the first time I saw everybody come together, both sides of the table come together. When I say everybody, I'm talking about not just the IA, but the Teamsters, laborers, SAG-AFTRA, DGA, and so on. And everybody took off their bargaining hats, right? And they put their industry hats on and said, okay, we have a challenge here. The challenge is to ensure that the people working on the sets, the people working on building the sets or setting the props or doing the lighting, whatever it may be, are as safe as humanly possible, but still be able to produce the product. And I just hope that we can keep that spirit going, well into the future, and I think we will, because that work then led to an agreement that was signed off just the other day, sort of laying out the terms and conditions of what will take place on a set and dealing with sort of the day-to-day. It doesn't get into the weeds on how you're going to do the work. It sort of lays out the conditions in which people will be employed in that. And that also is a remarkable document in that, once again, the employers and the unions came together and said, okay, we have this objective, which is to put everybody back to work and to create the product, that we can then share with the public. How do we do this in a way that isn't trying to save money or trying to earn extra money? It's all about how do we do this in a way that, again, protects the workers and at the same time allows the productions to operate in a fashion that they're accustomed to. So it was very heartening to see this whole process in the making.
Well, it's great to hear that that you felt that way about that process, and as you say, hopefully this will be something that might last after the crisis. Sometimes when we are facing, catastrophe, it's the time when people have to set aside differences, link together, and figure out how are we going to get through this together. And I've actually seen that again and again in many different contexts as we've gone through COVID-19, and hopefully that will have a lasting benefit for this industry after things are relatively back to normal as well.
And if I could, I'd just like to add too, part of this process has also included local government, right? And the county has been wonderful. Your office has been just a champion in making sure all this gets done, as well as the mayor's office. I mean, it's one of those instances where every stakeholder, possible has come together to try to make this thing work. And I just think it's important to that we give a shout out though to the local government, because so many times that part's overlooked, right? And it's a very key component to all of this. So I want to thank you and your staff, as well as the mayor of Los Angeles.
Thank you, Thom. Kathy, speaking of things that may remain after the crisis, you represent one of the major companies in the world in this industry. It's an industry that has been marked by dramatic changes throughout its history, and evolution and consolidation, and both on the business side and on the side of the actual product. It's constantly in flux, constantly in evolution. So from the position that you're in now, looking at the situation that this industry is facing, as you look forward, what do you anticipate to be the studio's greatest challenges, and what do you think might be some permanent long-term changes that may be happening in entertainment some for the better, some for the worse, I don't know, but what do you think as you look towards the future?
So I think we've already seen in the very early stages of the pandemic back in March, one of sort of the silver lining, if you will, for identifying some of them is that we really kind of took a look at what innovations in how we're producing content. And that's not just for film and television scripted content, but also for our broadcast stations, since we have 2 of them on the lot. So to the extent that we had, reporters, anchors working from home, being able to really splice that feed and deliver a good quality product to our consumers, give them timely news. Same with post-production editors. We really looked at enhancing a lot of that infrastructure technologically so that we can keep the work going as much as possible and keep people employed, keep producing our content. I mean, I think we've seen a massive shift by virtue of the fact that the movie theaters have closed and they're just starting to reopen in certain parts of the country. Obviously, more people were consuming product over different platforms online. And so we launched Peacock in July, and we're producing exclusive content for Peacock. And as of a week ago, it was up to 15 million subscribers. I don't think that sort of theatrical exhibition is going away entirely. I still know lots of people who love to go to the movies, who want to that group experience. I just think that sort of the trends that we were seeing even a year ago have been in some ways exacerbated by this pandemic and accelerated the process that may have otherwise taken years. So delivering these feature films straight to consumer via online production. We did it with Trolls, and that was, that was a risk, but we did it, and lots of people really enjoyed being able to pay $20 and view a movie at home with their children, especially with very few options for entertainment during those months. So I think we're going to continue to see more of that. Our CEO has been very vocal. He wants to be innovative. He wants to really sort of rise up and meet consumer demand. And really find ways to produce content and be as innovative as possible. So I think we're going to see more on that trend. I think we still have to contend with the fact that COVID is going to be with us for the foreseeable future. It is adding costs. It's really extending the time that we need for productions. It's adding shoot days. So the sheer volume of content is going to slow down for the foreseeable future, just in how much we can produce. But I think once we get a handle and really get some, clarity, we've spent a lot of time really procuring tests, making sure we have access to tests. Once we learn to really refine and work within this new normal, we do hope to be back at our old volume of production. It's just going to take time. The other thing I would add is the space. We're going to take a look at, also infrastructure. We have a 400-acre backlot. We're the largest studio, if you're going by acreage in LA. So we're going to really take a look at how we best utilize and maximize that space moving forward. Space is going to be at a premium for the reasons that, Philip was describing. We will eventually be back out in the neighborhoods, just like we were before. But for the time being, providing a controlled setting for filming production, it's much easier to do in stages. There's just a finite amount of stage space. And we were, again, having that problem last year. It's not a new problem. It's just been exacerbated by the pandemic. So, as big leader in this industry, we're going to keep looking for ways to, again, improve infrastructure, innovate on technology delivery, and really, again, just work through this as best as we can to make sure that we come out on top. And there's lots of things that we're looking forward to. We're still looking forward to things like the Olympics. There's a lot of sort of bright milestones for us in the next year or so. So it's not all gloom and doom, but I think we're really seeing sort of the fruits of the labor from the last 6 months just starting to pan out.
Well, that's good to hear, and I'm really glad that you mentioned looking forward as far ahead as the Olympics, which of course will be important to the entire region. It'll certainly be important to NBC Universal and all the news coverage that is going to relate to that. But it reminded me that as we pass through this immediate crisis, there are tremendous opportunities for Southern California just past the horizon. There are a lot of really significant investments in public infrastructure. There are huge international events that are coming here. We really have the opportunity to bounce back, I think, to have our regional economy bounce back from this. The tools are all there. Since government affairs is your portfolio, what would you most want to see as the steps that government should be taking at every level to help facilitate businesses like yours and other businesses in rebounding from this? What are the most important things at any level of government that government should be taking to help us bounce back from this?
So it's multi-pronged. I would say I think Thom already hit it on the head with the cooperation we've had from our local officials as well as public health in not only developing the protocols, but also every time we have a clarifying question with the guidelines and implementing them, we come up with new issues every day that weren't exactly thought out initially. And that's just the nature of the beast. That close partnership with public health on the guidelines, I think it's critical for not just our industry, for everyone. I think infrastructure and transportation have always been things that we care about as a company that employs lots of people in the LA region, and who we entertain lots of guests at our theme park when it's open. So to the extent that the city is thinking long-term about how we improve our overall infrastructure, how we improve just the movement of people, and sort of COVID now is adding an additional layer of complexity to that because of the risks now associated with public transit. I mean, those are all problems that they're not entertainment specific problems, but they're things that we very much care about because we can't, there's a limit to how much we can invest into our property and how much things we can cram into. So we will look at the regional approach, and when we can partner with government on these long-term objectives in mobility and infrastructure, it's a win-win for everyone.
Thank you. And actually, I want to touch on that a little bit with Philip because a lot of our discussion has been very film and television specific, but the truth is, as these businesses come back, it benefits all businesses in the area. And at the end of the day, a business is a business, and you have to figure out how are you going to make your budget, and how are you going to make a profit, and how are you going to keep your people employed. And it occurs to me that there are so many businesses in Southern California that depend for a lot of their income on this industry that people don't think of as industry businesses. In my district, whether it's a dry cleaner or local restaurants, as you pointed out earlier, obviously prop houses and other sort of direct vendors like that, but so many businesses in the Valley and throughout Los Angeles have lost a big chunk of their income just because this industry has shut down. Can you give any sense of scale of that, or talk a little bit about the non-film and television related businesses that are also impacted by this slowdown?
Sure, I truthfully can. The interesting thing to know about industry infrastructure is that it's not just stuff, right? It's people, and it's the availability of this support resource in those businesses that lets production happen here more easily than anywhere else. In fact, there are a lot of jurisdictions across the globe that rely upon LA-based production infrastructure, prop houses, suppliers of various kinds to actually have production work there. We're shipping it out. So there's value there for the local business and also the logistics companies that move the goods back and forth. But it's important to understand that there are something like there are over 5,000 of those support vendors to the industry headquartered here in Los Angeles. And the majority of them are bona fide small businesses with fewer than 10 employees each. Now, these are the exact kind of employers that have been particularly hard hit by this lost quarter of activity. Many have had to say so long to staff who've served with them a period of years or put them on furlough, erode their benefits. And it's something that they haven't wanted to do. So with regard to what can the city and municipal partners be doing to help there, I would say help us bridge them through, because they're a major competitive advantage for Los Angeles that other competing places will take decades to amass. And we have them here. We don't want to see them go under. We don't want to see a drain of that talent to other places. The more we can keep those businesses holding on, the simpler it is to reboot the film industry generally and then come back up to speed in a rapid fashion. And when we understand that these are mom and pops, these are multi-generation businesses, these are people who built a unique contribution in a unique niche in a unique industry, it's all the more worth saving because it's so rare and so precious a thing.
It's a great point. And I always used to argue that one of the competitive advantages that we have here, even when other states might offer a more lucrative tax incentive, for example, for production, is that if you can't match the crews, if you can't match the vendors, if you can't match the talent that we have here in Los Angeles, it's almost a false savings because it costs so much to be able to replicate those things or move those things to someplace else. And you're right, I've had the really unfortunate circumstance of seeing businesses that have been in my district for decades, generations, that have been lost now. And once those businesses, say a prop house is lost and the collection is broken up, it can never be reassembled. It's gone for good. And so that's why the city, as soon as this pandemic began, we funded the $11 million fund for small businesses, for the small business loan program that I initiated. There were a number of other steps that we took to try to help those businesses stay afloat through the worst of this time so that they can get back on their feet as we begin to recover. And speaking about getting back on our feet, Thom, I.A.T.S.E, since its beginning, has been there to help its members. For 100 years, this has been an industry that has been charitably minded and also focused on ensuring that the well-being of people who work in the industry is taken care of. So can you talk a little bit about when your members are in need through this, what are some of the things that they can do to have those needs met? What are some of the programs that the union may have or that you're aware of that other government or other charitable organizations may have for those who really are in need? And where should they go? What should they do? What advice would you have to give to a GRIP who hasn't worked and really is worried about keeping their home, for example?
Well, thank you for that question, because there's actually a really important component of one of the important components of what the actions we took early on. We're very fortunate that we have a couple industry charities that have been supporting the industry people for a very long time. You have the Actors Fund, and you have the Motion Picture and Television Fund. Now, to both of those entities, I guess it was probably late March, the International itself gave $1.5 million to those two charities. And then later, another $1 million as well. And we did that because they have the infrastructure, they have the means in order to service people as they find themselves in need. Whereas we'd have to have created a duplicative system. So we were very fortunate that they were there in place. I don't have the actual numbers of how many people have been helped or how, to what degree, but it's in the millions of dollars to the tens of thousands of people. We were also fortunate that the company stood up as well. We had Netflix gave $1 million to the two charities. The companies, to their credit, rather than just laying people off, actually kept people on payroll. for weeks and weeks and weeks. Universal itself for 5 weeks kept people on payroll. Warner Brothers did something similar, and all the companies did something in that regard. I think Warner Brothers and Universal, NBC Universal, probably the most generous. But that really said something about the people in the industry, right? So here we have corporations, publicly held corporations, that their CEOs recognize that it's more than just a company, it's more than just a publicly held corporation, that is actually part of a community. And so I think that it should be recognized what these companies did and how they stepped up. I mean, it had to have been hard for them because their business ceased, right? It wasn't like they were still in the business of making product and selling the product. Their business stopped as well. So I think a big shout out needs to go to the companies as well in that regard, and as well as the charities that serve the industry, in particular the Motion Picture and Television Fund. They have a huge campus over in Woodland Hills, and you may have heard of the Industry Home. That's for people. They have the retirement community there for people in the community industry that's retired. But they also have their social services there as well, and that deals everything from grants to help people deal with their mortgages and just get by with their day-to-day expenses, to health care, mental health services, which has been absolutely a tremendous benefit in this time. The number of people that have come under the stresses that the pandemic and the unemployment has brought has been incredible, and they've done just a remarkable job in servicing our members.
Thank you for that. And actually, Kathy, since that was such a nice transition that Thom just set up for us to go to you, can you talk a little bit about what has NBCU done to try to help its employees through this time, and what suggestions would you have for any employees who feel that they're in need right now?
So we've done a number of things as Thom, thank you, Thom, by the way, that was really kind. We did our best to keep people on payroll for as long as we could, especially since at the time when the initial shutdowns happened, it was not entirely clear how long it would be before we can get back to work. And that's not only on the production side, but also on the theme park side. And it's once we could no longer pay them a normal salary, in some cases we've just been able to keep paying the premiums to cover their health care. So that last thing that we want is our employees to not only be out of work, but also have to worry about a lapse in healthcare coverage in the middle of a pandemic. The other thing, we get questions all the time with help navigating the unemployment system. We've helped employees on that end. And for those that have kept on working throughout, there's been a variety of mental health, wellness sort of services that have been made available. Childcare. I myself, I have 2 boys. I have a 9-year-old and a 13-year-old that are homeschooling or virtual learning. And NBC Universal has offered sort of alternative childcare services for parents who are struggling to maintain their workload and support their kids at home. So it's really been in a wide array of services that have been rolled out. Not only that, but just trying to foster a culture of checking in and sort of from the top down, from our executive leadership down. It's just the importance of checking in with your team members. Thom's point is we're very much a family. So if anyone's struggling, identifying employees who, for example, live alone and may have had to shelter in place alone without any relatives, just acknowledging that itself brings a set of challenges that the employee might not be willing to ask for help, but you still should be checking in on them. So just been constant sort of outreach, maintaining that sense of community, and just acknowledging the hardships across the board, not only from loss of jobs, but just the what your day-to-day looks like when you're working from home. If any employees, I would encourage, again, for NBC Universal employees, there's always, again, a wide array of services that can be utilized. And for others, I'm happy to talk to anyone from what we've done, just to try to help navigate sort of some of the bureaucracies that we've seen for some of these unemployment benefits. Try to make myself available as much as I can for those questions.
Well, it's really encouraging to hear that the business, labor, philanthropy are all stepping up to kind of help people through one of the most challenging times that any of us has faced in our lifetimes. And certainly in an industry that, as Thom said at the outset, has experienced essentially 99% unemployment overnight. That's a challenge. And it takes people really stepping up and looking out for each other to get through a challenge like that. I know I can speak for the City of Los Angeles in saying that we are going to continue to be the strongest partner that we can be for this industry, to try to encourage resumption of production and encourage more production to come here to Los Angeles. Just a few months ago, before this all started, there was barely a week that went by that we didn't have a location shoot going on in City Hall. We give all city facilities to the film industry permit fee, without a permit fee, so that we can encourage more production here. And we take every step we can to try to encourage more production, not because it helps companies, but because it helps people. It helps people keep their jobs. It helps people who are living in Los Angeles continue to work in Los Angeles. And that's the key thing to me, is making sure that we continue to have the very best talent, the very best crews, and the very best vendors in this industry anywhere in the world. So Thom, on that note, just as we close out, you've been around this game for a while. If there are young people out there who are just breaking into this industry, or thinking about it, or who want to try to pursue a career in this industry, given the circumstances that we're facing right now, what advice would you give to them as we're looking forward to the future?
I would say patience, right? Look, it can be a very challenging industry just by the nature of the employment, but at the same time can be very, very rewarding. It offers an opportunity to have a career puts you into just the working middle class that will be able to provide for you and your family, put your kids through school and that sort of thing. Right now is a real challenge, but I think it feels like we're getting back on our feet. So I would just say, just exercise some patience. Stay in touch with whoever it is that you've been talking to, because it will come back. It will come back. I tend to be a bit of an optimist, and over the years I've seen a lot of challenges. I've seen everything from one runaway production. I remember the actor strike way back in 1980, the writer's strike, two of them. And each time people write us off, right? We've seen the earthquakes and all the other problems that we've suffered over the years. But yet it's a very resilient industry, and we will come back, and we will be strong, and there will be opportunities. Exercise a little patience, hang in there. It's a wonderful way to make a living. Even with all these challenges, the rewards are so great. So, I would say at this point, just to exercise a little patience and stay in touch with those people that you've been communicating with.
Well, thank you. It's a great note for us to close on. And the one thing I would just add to that is, if you want to be in this industry, there's no better place to be in it than right here in the city of Los Angeles. This is Hollywood, both in a literal sense and in the more metaphorical sense. This is the place to be if you want to be in film and television production. And I know that I can speak for the city in saying that the city of Los Angeles is going to be here to continue to support this industry and ensure that it continues to be a place to have a great career for the rest of your working life. So I want to thank you all very much. Philip, Thom, Kathy, thank you very much for being with us. And to all of you who are watching, I'm Councilman Paul Krekorian. Thank you for joining us for this latest in our series of webinars. Look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thanks very much.